Then I became a graduate assistant. And when I became a graduate assistant, my brother Jimmy was down in military school, and so he was well recruited, but they wanted him to stay there as well. So I told Bo, and I was a graduate assistant at Miami. So I told Bo, I said, you got to get my brother. So he actually flew him up from military school, which at Miami it doesn't do very much of that. They normally get the local guy. And he came over and had dinner with us. And my mom and dad went down to see Jimmy play at Augusta, which is in Virginia, and they had a wreck one time. So I said, Mom and Dad, he has got to go to a place where you can go see him play, easily, like 6 games, he'll be at home. And so my dad graduated from Notre Dame, and my dad and Woody will tell you, he played baseball, and he's a letterman at Notre Dame. Well, he wanted Jimmy to go to Notre Dame. And it happens that the offensive line coach at Notre Dame was my offensive line coach at Miami under Schembechler. He went on, became offensive line coach with Ara Parseghian at Notre Dame. So I said, we'll give Jerry a call. Jerry Wofford was his name, and we'll see if he can see Jimmy. Well, he didn't know a damn thing about Jimmy. So those were the days that, they didn't fly him out. They didn't even know who the hell he was. So Dad and Jimmy get in the car. Now they're going 70 over to Indianapolis. And, it was a terrible road. So they drive up, and it's about a 6-hour drive from where we lived. And they got up there, and the graduate assistant met him. And he says, well, what's your name again? Jim Stillwagon. And he says, Jimmy was in military school, and he was a wrestler. Jimmy wrestled too. And so they said, well, let's go to dinner. So they had a hamburger, and the guy, he's a graduate assistant. So he didn't even meet Jerry Wofford. He never got to meet him, and he never met Ara. And the guy told Jimmy, he says, Jim, he says, you ought to go to a school where you can play. You're not big enough to play here. Jimmy says, what? I said, I can't believe he said that to him. And so Jimmy came home, and he said to my dad, he says, Dad, I may not be big enough to play at Notre Dame or any place, but nobody will ever be stronger than me. And we had a power rack in the backyard that I had when I played at Miami, and Jimmy could bench press easy 300 pounds as a high school kid. And so he was a hell of a wrestler, and he threw the shot put 63 feet, which wouldn't have stayed in Ohio, and it won Virginia. So he threw the shot put really far. So, he comes home, and he was kind of dejected. My Notre Dame didn't even hardly talk to him. So I says, well, there's one more. I says, I know Lou McCullough at Ohio State. He's the defensive coordinator. We'll give him a call. And so they gave him a call, and they said, yeah, come on over. This kid from Mount Vernon. We were from Mount Vernon then. And he says, well, just come on over, and we'll show you around. So, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm telling you, this is some of the stories. So Dad and Jimmy go over to Ohio State, and they meet Lou, and they don't know who this kid is. They never seen film on him. They said, well, he just called up, and he's from Mount Vernon. And Jimmy was wrestling then, and he had like a 18 and a half. I mean, he had a hell of a neck on him, and he had his hair, and his nose was all, he was a heavyweight wrestler. And so Woody says, well, who's this kid? And he says, this is Jim Stillwagon. He says, well, come on in here. So he goes in there, and Woody was a military buff. He loved military. So he started talking military because Jimmy was in military school. Jimmy and he says, what, have you read anything? And Jimmy told me stuff. He said, yeah. He says, I read about that whale, the whale that, and he goes, you did? He says, yeah. And he says, well, that's good. He says, and he started getting into military, and he talked about military, and he says, well, you know what? He says, you want to play at Ohio State? And Jimmy said, I love playing at Ohio State. And he shook his hand. He says, well, you got a full scholarship here.
Wow.
And so he walks out, and Lou McCullough says, hey, what'd you think of that kid from Mount Vernon? He says, I really like him. He says, well, we're going to get film on him. We'll evaluate him, and we'll see what we're going to do with him. He says, you don't have to worry about it. He says, I already gave him a full ride. They never saw film on him. and he got a full ride to Ohio State just by the looks.